So we have a big update in the draft section of Equality, Feminism. According to PJ Media and other sources, women may have to register for the draft as men's group wins selective service lawsuit. So it was not that long ago, I don't know the exact dates, that there was, I believe it was like a ruling or a debate in Congress over what women should be required to sign up for the draft. And the reason was they have opened up combat roles to women. The argument then was, if women can serve in combat, why aren't they eligible for selective service? Like, they should be drafted too. And apparently now a men's group has filed a lawsuit and won. My understanding is this is a federal court in Texas, which means it may move up. But this could mean women may now be drafted. So we'll read from PJ Media. Women may have to register for the draft as men group wins selective service lawsuit. On Friday, a Texas judge ruled that the selective service system violates the Constitution by requiring only men to register for the draft. The court ruled with the National Coalition for Men in a lawsuit claiming the male-only draft constitutes discrimination against men. NCFM's lawyer told PJ Media that even if the selective service system appeals, they are likely to lose again. He also suggested the Pentagon will not end the draft, so women may have to register. The male-only registration requirement of the Military Selective Service Act violates the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment to the United States of the Constitution, U.S. District Judge Gray H. Miller ruled on Friday. Mark Angelucci, NCFM's lawyer, told PJ Media he does not know whether or not the Selective Service will appeal. I don't think they'll win an appeal, he said. If the ruling stands, the Pentagon will either have to scrap the draft altogether, never going to happen, or force women to register. They could do either of those, but I don't think they'll get rid of the draft because the Pentagon is arguing strongly to keep the draft. So, I'll read this real quick. We take the position that if women are in combat, then they should have to register for the draft, the lawyer explained. There's no more excuse to discriminate against men because women are in combat. A lot of people think there's no draft. There is. For the most part, the military in this country is volunteer. I know there's a lot of people who don't live in the U.S. who watch this, so for those that don't live in the U.S., when you turn 18 and you're a dude, you got to sign up for the draft. It is widely believed they won't implement it, but in extreme circumstances, it probably does make sense. While I don't really agree with the idea of conscription, I recognize that in really extreme situations, it can make sense, right? If we get invaded or something, and, what do? Do we just give up? No. But they'll never get rid of it. I think that would be insane. Not that they should keep it, but that I really don't see the government wanting to do away with the power to conscript people should they really need to, which means women are probably going to have to sign up for the draft. And one of the funniest things about this was, like I mentioned, it was a couple years ago, I think, that they were discussing whether or not women should serve in the draft. A bunch of women were posting on Twitter and social media about how feminism wasn't worth it. And they were like, no, we weren't talking about going to war and getting drafted. Well, there you go. In equality, all things, right? And this is one of the biggest criticisms that you'll see men's groups or, anti-feminists have with feminism, is there's very few relative to the cultural, the high-profile feminists. You don't see them arguing in favor of women serving in the draft. You don't see them arguing in favor of working in coal mines or on oil rigs. They're usually arguing in favor of, more comfortable, high-paying jobs, which is fine. Everybody's going to advocate for themselves and their group. But if we actually want to address equality, that means you're going to end up with women serving or being drafted, right? Plain and simple. Now, I guess apparently there's criticism of this group because they're labeled a hate group or something. So, but we'll read on. I don't know if I'm going to read through the nitty-gritty, but they get to the SPLC, which I think is interesting. Even if women were not allowed in combat, they could still be drafted for non-combat duties. If they're not in combat, they should still have to register because they can have non-combat roles. Ironically, this almost happened during World War II. In January 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt asked Congress to amend the Military Selective Service Act in order to draft women to meet a growing need for nurses in France. In March of that year, the House of Representatives passed such a bill, but the Senate delayed a vote, and in May, Under Secretary of War Robert P. Patterson asked the Senate to shelve the bill. Nurses then volunteered to meet the need. And so they go on. Okay. In 1981, the Supreme Court ruled that women could be exempted from the draft because they were not allowed to serve in combat. I disagree with that. And I think if you look back to World War II, it actually makes more sense. Not everybody who serves in the military is in combat. There's chefs, okay? So there's engineering, there's, mechanics, nurses, medics, etc. There are a lot of non-combat roles, like deployable roles that there's no reason we should only be drafting men. And so I find it really interesting that in 1981 they flat out said the draft is basically about combat, which I think is just absurd. Because imagine, okay, let's say even if you didn't have women in the draft, what if you have a guy who's an engineer or a mechanic, and you could replace him with a woman and send the guy to combat, right? I don't like the idea of men being forced into combat, but the idea is, if you actually want to be efficient, okay, fill the non-combat roles that men are occupying with women who aren't in combat, and then you'll have more men in combat. I just don't see why it would make sense to exclude women at all from a draft. Men face severe penalties for refusing to register. As the draft's website puts it, it's what a man's got to do. By registering, a young man stays eligible for jobs, college loans, and job grants, job training, driver's license in most states, and U.S. citizenship for most immigrant men. According to the lawsuit, there are about 16 million men currently registered for the draft. These men are on-call soldiers until they turn 26. The Selective Service System calls this voluntary participation, but the judge declared it unconstitutional. It's anything but voluntary. You get threatened with like jail time. In a press release on the victory, the National Coalition for Men explained why fighting this discrimination is important. Forcing only males to register is an aspect of socially institutionalized male disposability and helps reinforce the stereotypes that support discrimination against men in other areas such as child custody, divorce, criminal sentencing, paternity fraud, education, public benefits, domestic violence services, due process rights, genital autonomy, and more. Even without a draft, men still face prison fines, and denial of federal loans for not registering or for not updating the government of their whereabouts, Angelucci explained. Since women will be required to register with the Selective Service, they should face the same repercussions as men for any non-compliance. In her article breaking the news of the lawsuit back in September, PJ Media's Tony Iraksinen, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Tony, quoted Warren Farrell, author of The Myth of Male Power, who ties the draft to a cultural trend of treating men as the disposable sex in society as a facet of unconscious sexism against men. Males aren't expendable. We need them to be willing to protect us in war, fighting fires, and in all hazardous jobs. But when they come home with PTSD, they're disposable, and calling men heroes if they sacrifice their life is a social bribe, Farrell told PJ Media. But hold on. Controversial statement. Relatively, men are disposable. And it's actually really simple. Hear me out. I've explained this before, but let's say you have 100 men and 100 women in a society. If all but one woman dies, there's only one woman left, your society will likely collapse because women are the sex that creates more babies, right? I know together, but they bear the children. You only have one woman, it's every 9 months you can have one more baby, and people are going to age off, and it's going to be a serious struggle, especially for the woman. Let's say all but one man dies. You have 100 women, that man could impregnate all of the women, and you have 100 babies in 9 months. So this is why, at least in my opinion, I'm not a evolutionary biologist, it makes sense that our cultural norms emerged out of this, where it's like, okay, look, we can send a lot of guys to die and be fine. And there's another interesting thing here. So I was reading something on Reddit where they said the reason why Smith is such a common last name is because blacksmiths wouldn't be sent into war because they were making weapons, but also when cities and other countries were captured, they wouldn't kill the blacksmiths because blacksmiths make weapons. So they were more likely to survive and have kids. And I have to wonder if that in turn passed on any kind of like technological pressure, because the people who understood, had the ability to develop and engineer, were the ones more likely to survive, which is really interesting. So I'm going a little long. I want to go down and bring up the Southern Poverty Law Center. They say, last year the SPLC attacked the National Coalition for Men, smearing it as a group dedicated to male supremacy. Angelucci responded to this attack. We have women on our board. We have liberals and conservatives. It is absolute nonsense what they say about us, the lawyer told PJ Media. We've only ever asked for equal rights. They have to smear and lie instead of debate substance. That's pretty much how they operate. Ironically, the SPLC honored Angelucci himself for his public interest work in mental health law. His biography page on NCFM's website references the honor. The Southern Poverty Law Center invited him to be an honoree on their Wall of Tolerance, co-sponsored by Rosa Parks and Morris Dees. On the issue of the male-only draft, Congress considered a bill forcing women to register back in 2016. This is what I was referencing. Rep. Steny Hoyer, now the House Majority Leader, told The Hill that women should be forced to register for the draft as a matter of equality. Women ought to be treated equally, Hoyer said. If you're going to have the selective service registration continue, and you're going to have women available to serve in the armed forces in either frontline capacity or support capacity or both, which I think is now the case legally, then I think it makes sense to have eligible individuals, male or female, register as long as you have registration. Many Democrats express their desire to end the draft altogether. Indeed, that move seems more fitting with America's volunteer military culture. Parents across the nation will likely be outraged to hear their daughters will have to register for the draft. If Angelucci is correct, however, that seems rather likely. Equality. And that means the good with the bad. And I agree. If we're going to have a draft, there's no reason to exclude women. I do not think women need to be protected. I think we've advanced as a culture and a society, and it makes sense. Even if you're someone who's much more traditional or more conservative and you think women shouldn't be in combat, you can absolutely agree that there's non-combat roles women can serve. I made that point. So we'll leave it here. Stick around. I'm going to have another video on my main channel at 4 p.m., youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you then.